Well, I'll talk about that in a second. First of all, I just want to say, it's a great pleasure to be here at the 4th annual Shamanism conference in Iquitos. I missed last year, but the previous two were great events. And it's wonderful to be once again in Hotel Parthenon and to see so many familiar faces and new faces. And it's just an unmitigated pleasure. And thanks to Alan Shoemaker and Mariella, the real force behind the throne, if you want to put it that way, for organizing this and all the other people that have put such effort into it. Let's give them a hand. Okay, well, I'm a little tired. I've been at 3 conferences. I've been doing 2 conferences at once here in Iquitos. The previous one and a conference at the university, Universidad Nacional Amazonía de la Paraguana, who some of you know about it and some of you don't. But so I'm a little exhausted, and I keep waiting for the inspiration to come. Unlike most of the time when I present here before, I usually have a PowerPoint up there, and as you know, I like to download a lot of information in my talks, usually. But that's not going to happen tonight because I don't have any prepared remarks. So I guess it will have to come from the heart, which is really the best place for it to come from. Ayahuasca's been a personal and professional preoccupation of mine for about 30 years. I have to say that whatever my path has been, whether it's been significant or not, and some people seem to think so, and for that I thank you, but every interesting thing that's ever happened to me in my life has been because of ayahuasca. It's led me to some really strange places, both on this planet and I guess on other planets, I don't know, in some interesting dimensions. But, it's rich. We don't know anything. And the more I take ayahuasca and the more I study this phenomenon, the less I actually know. And I think, again and again, I think ayahuasca, if it has a lesson to teach us, the lesson is how little we know, really, about anything. That's one of the lessons. So, I don't know who it was, maybe Socrates or somebody said, the first path to wisdom is understanding that you know nothing. And I think ayahuasca teaches that there is a vast and marvelous universe out there, and we only the tiniest slice of it. And so we should be, secondly, we should be humble. When we realize how little we know. Again, I've said it before in many speeches, but I do mean it sincerely. Ayahuasca says to me, and I think to many of us, you monkeys only think you're running the show. We're not running the show. The plants are running the show, as they always have. Plants sustain life on Earth, and plants are our teachers. If it weren't for plants, if it weren't for this ability of plants to photosynthesize, this is the trick that they've learned, and by that trick they sustain all life on Earth. They are the element that biology uses to bring energy out of the cosmos and bring it into the biosphere and create this precious blue planet that we inhabit. We're all more or less parasites on plants. Everything that doesn't photosynthesize is a parasite on a plant, on plants, either directly or indirectly. But maybe we don't like the term parasites. Maybe a better term is, or the way we'd like it to be, is we're symbiotes on plants. Symbiosis is when two organisms of vastly different species live closely together for mutual benefit. And this has always been the relationship that humans have had, although we haven't always realized it. Nor have we treated our plant partners truly as equal partners, nor have we respected them perhaps the way that they deserve. I think at this historical juncture, it's very interesting that ayahuasca is, well, it is going global, since it's reaching out to the human species. It's trying to deepen this alliance, the alliance that curanderos, that indigenous people have always had with ayahuasca, is now spreading. And the curanderos say the plant calls, that the vine calls. And it obviously is true. It's called all of you here. You wouldn't be here, you wouldn't have made the effort if you didn't have a deep feeling and inner motivation to come here and learn what you can from the teacher. And the teachers, the curanderos, who are the guarders of the knowledge. But I think we have to be careful. I think there is a tendency, in the face of a powerful mystery, in the face of a true tremendum, which is what ayahuasca is, there's a tendency to appropriate it. It's a natural human tendency in the face of something powerful to reach out and say, yes, this is my thing, and the way I present it is the right way, and the way those people over there are presenting it, no, they don't know what they're doing. But I think that's a danger. I think we really have to, again, be humble and say, ayahuasca decides how, where, and to whom it will present itself. I've been increasingly sort of fascinated by the various vessels in which it chooses to come to humanity. Not everyone can come here and drink ayahuasca with curanderos. Some people encounter it in different ways. Some people encounter it in the neo-shamanic context of Marin County in California or Hawaii. Others are drawn to the UDV or the Santo Daime. Others are drawn to more traditional curanderismo. Others make it up as they go along. And as far as I can see, it's all good. You know, this is all good. Because the important thing is that ayahuasca is reaching out to people. And it finds many vessels and many channels through which to filter its message. We should never lose sight of the fact that the ultimate teacher, the ultimate curandero, is ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is the teacher. The curanderos are the keepers of the knowledge. There's no one way to do it. Ultimately, the important thing is that there is a context, there is a vessel. It's important to have that context, that vessel. But the real learning comes when one communicates directly with the teacher. The teacher, it's an intensely individual thing. You may have it within a context, but I think, you know, you should do what you feel is right. The important thing is that you have the experience, that you connect with the teacher. I think that we're all plant people. We wouldn't be here if we weren't plant people. We're called to this conference by a plant. We move out into our lives and do what we do. And a plant is our chief counsel. We do what we do because of plants and for plants. So we have to sort of take on this mantle. I mean, if we haven't already, we have to realize, we work for the plants. And so we need to do what the plants want us to do. And I think what the plants want us to do is to form symbioses. And they want us to share information. They want us to teach other plant people. Plants want it spread around. That's what they do. They want symbiosis because that's a way to further their agenda. And we need to follow that. We need to do what plant people have always done, which is share plants, share knowledge. The most revolutionary thing you can do is grow a garden. And to give the cuttings away to your neighbors, urge them to grow it and give them away. Use the abilities that plants have to spread around, to spread not only their life-giving sustenance, but also the knowledge that they contain. This is the only thing that's going to save us, is the sharing of this knowledge. In some sense, sometimes a phrase I sometimes use, which I feel a little ambiguous about using it, in a sense, is we're all bioterrorists. These sacred plants are our bioweapons. But our bioweapons don't kill people, unlike the death culture's bioweapons. Our bioweapons, the bioweapons of plant people, change hearts and minds. They change thinking. This is what we have to do, is change thinking on a global scale. And we have to help the plants do this. This is our mission, to the extent that we can do this. The plants, I think, have reached the point where they need our help, and they need, this is why they're spreading, this is why they're reaching out, this is why so many people feel drawn to it. You all came here for different reasons, and you're all following different paths, and yet, at the end of the day, here we are. And we're here to learn from a plant, or lots of plants, but one or two in particular, ayahuasca and chacruna in combination. And we're very fortunate to have these teachers. We're very fortunate to have this medicine. And I think that we have to kind of we don't want to commit the error that the death culture commits, which is this notion that we're at the pinnacle of nature, we can own nature, and we can control it. That's what they do. What we do is we have to fight back. And these are the tools that we use to fight back, because these are the tools that change hearts and minds. And that's the only way it's going to happen. And I think that we'll win. The life culture always prevails over the death culture. But what I'm concerned about now is, these evolutionary timescales that this has always gone on millennia and hundreds of millennia. We don't have that much time, about 50 years, before it will be clear that either we're going to make it or we're not. So we have to get to it. It has to somehow move more quickly. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. Everything is accelerating. We have to use the tools that we have, the ability to propagate information rapidly, the ability to use the internet and other information technologies to spread these teachings, the ability to use modes of knowledge, modes of teaching, most of all our own personal experiences and symbioses with the planet, plants, and with the planet, to counter the propaganda and bullshit of the death culture. We have to make a stand for life. We have to make a stand for survival. And ayahuasca says, well, get to work, you monkeys. You only think you're running things. Get to it. We've given you the tools. We have the tools. And in a way, I guess I'm obviously preaching to the converted here. I mean, you're all here, so I don't really need to say this message to you. I mean, you all realize it in your hearts and minds already. You are the catalysts for change. And I think it's a case of trying to educate the rest of our friends, who may not have access to these medicines, who may be caught in the webs of propaganda and lies that the global corporate government hegemony propagates. It's very hard to get out of it, but I don't know what to say. I think we have the tools. We have to use them with all our hearts and all our minds. I guess through events like this, we're trying to do that. And we have to be, above all, we have to be humble about this. We have to realize how little we know. And we have to avoid committing the same sort of mistakes that they have mistakes, to appropriate things. And the plants, remember, the plants have their way. And however you come to it, that's good. The important thing is that you have the connection with your plant teacher. It will teach you what it wants you to know. I've for a long time as a scientist, a lot of my relationship with ayahuasca has been driven by scientific curiosity. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that curiosity is something that drives discovery. It's something that moves us forward, But I've been conflicted for a long time about the scientific study of ayahuasca, because although I've done a lot of it, when it comes to the question of doing, for example, a biomedical study on ayahuasca for something like addiction or alcoholism or things like that. On the one hand, there's the human impulse to, yes, well, this medicine could help many people who are hurting, who could benefit from it. So it would be good to have it accepted into medical practice, but then the regulatory framework to enable this to happen is so daunting. It's almost as though they've set it up. They've made it impossible, really, to move this medicine forward and to enable it to become part of, sort of this soulless biomedicine. There are numerous issues here. Regulatory, the whole attitude of biomedical science toward natural medicines, toward plant medicines, the failure even of biomedicine to acknowledge that we have souls. Souls have been, the soul, the spirit, has been exorcised out of medicine for about 200 years. I mean, that began early on, really, about the turn of the 19th century, when pharmacist Sutter first isolated morphine in a pure form from the opium poppy. And he was the first one to get a crystal form of morphine. And he tested it on himself, on his friends, and found, gee, it reproduced almost all the effects of opium. Great. Here we have a pure compound that's a lot like opium. So we don't need opium anymore. We don't need this plant. We can just extract this pure compound. and use that. It's a lot easier to measure, and it's a lot more potent, and it's all these things. And that really was the beginning of the sort of change in attitude that led to the current understanding, that we have of medicine, and that led ultimately to the exorcism of spirit out of medicine. You know, medicine came, shortly after morphine. You can, the 19th century in some ways you can think of as the age of alkaloids. Alkaloids, of which morphine is probably the primary, a prime example. Alkaloids are easy to isolate. That's why the primitive technologies of those days was able to do that. So after morphine, quickly followed quinine and caffeine and cocaine and nicotine and hyoscyamine and all of these alkaloids that we value as both medicines and drugs of abuse, if you will. They came along because they were easy to purify. And so it led to this sort of mindset in biomedicine that, organisms, people were just machines. They had no spirit. Illness was the result of a malfunction of the machine. And, you can apply the right molecular screwdriver or monkey wrench, however you want to think of it, and you could tweak something here, and, upregulate a receptor there, or downregulate an enzyme over there, and it'd all be good. You'd be healed. So this idea that, the spirit has nothing to do with healing, has nothing to do with essentially who we are, has sort of began at that time and has since permeated medicine. So medicine is very, they want to be scientific and reductionist. They look at, we're just complex machines, and they've totally lost the understanding that, the mind and the body are an integrated system. You can change the mind and change the body. You cannot heal the body without healing the mind. It seems to this group pretty obvious stuff. This is stuff curanderos have known for thousands of years. And they would say, "What? Well, of course, we know this." But you'd be surprised. I work in the place in, my actual day job, or part of it is I work for the Center for Spirituality and Healing at the University of Minnesota. This is the alternative medicine program there. So now, I have to tell people, when I give speeches, I said I work for the Center for Spirituality and Healing. I'm sorry it's such a new age sounding name, spirituality and healing, what's that? But that's what I work for, and it's a hopeful sign, because I think the person that founded this program was very brave to name it that, because it's from sort of stick it in your eye acknowledgement that in medicine there is no healing without healing of the spirit. And slowly, these alternative medicine programs under whatever name, integrated medicine or whatever, holistic medicine, are sort of trying to turn around the institution of biomedicine. But it's happening very slowly, and there are great forces arrayed against it. The pharmaceutical companies certainly don't like this. Mainstream science doesn't like this. This doesn't fit into the paradigm of, getting grants and proving your experiments on rats and then doing controlled, double-blind clinical studies. It's an awkward paradigm under the best of circumstances. When it comes to psychedelics, you may as well throw that out the window. It just, it's absurd. It's so absurd. But if you want to get your stuff published, you have to do that. Otherwise, they'll come down on you. I don't know how many of you are aware, probably most of you are aware of this interesting study that Roland Griffiths did a couple of years ago with psilocybin. and mystical experience. It was a placebo-controlled, double-blind clinical study using psilocybin in a group of psychedelic naive patients, people who had never taken psychedelics, but had an interest in spiritual matters. And it got rave reviews. It got rave reviews in the mainstream media, not because, of what it showed, but because it was a well-designed study, right? We can't criticize this because it was well-designed, right? Well, what came out? What was the conclusion that came out? Well, 30% of the subjects said it was the single most significant experience of their lives. And 30%, 67% or thereabouts of the patients said it was among the 5 most significant experiences of their lives. And these were people who had never taken psychedelics. Well, my God, if you have a medicine that can provoke the single most significant experience of your life, I think we ought to be looking into that, don't you? But it goes slowly. I mean, it got, it was on CNN, and it was in the media for a week or so, and then people moved on to, the latest, whatever it was, Britney Spears' dysfunction, or John McCain's lies, or whatever, this is one of the poisonous aspects of mass culture. It is insatiable, and it moves very quickly, so it's very hard to keep this in front of people. I mean, even the drug faction, even the people in the drug abuse industrial political complex who have criticized psychedelic research for years and who have said, these things have no possible use, and they're simply, drugs of abuse, and they should all be eradicated, and everybody should be locked up who has any interest in them. Even they were forced to say, yeah, this was a pretty good study, actually. I mean, we have to admit, he did a good job, but they failed to see the implications beyond that. I mean, they grudgingly acknowledged that he did good science. But if you came up with something that could provoke the single most important, most significant experience of your life, I mean, that's important. Calling press conferences all over the place, you should be proclaiming it to the world. For the first time since spirit was exorcised out of nature, we have a medicine. Treat the spirit that can actually reunite, reintroduce the spirit into nature. That's huge. That is really, really huge. And that's what these technologies are. They are medicines for the mind, the body, and the spirit. And as a species and as individuals, we need these. We need these medicines because as a species, we're losing our spirit. As a species, our spirit is mortally wounded. That's why the death culture has the vice grip right now on all of the world's wealth, all of the world's resources, and apparently the world's agenda. Because, they have had the opportunity to seize it, and so they have. And we're just now beginning to gather our strength and getting ready to fight back. And I guess that's the optimism part. People are waking up to this. I mean, I come to conferences like this, I travel all over the world. This is happening everywhere. Everywhere that there's access to these plant spirits, to these plant teachers, this is literally a grassroots, if you will, literally from the roots revolution that's taking place. revolution that's taking place. It's breaking out in various parts of the world, all over the world. Australia, Europe, Japan, Hawaii, the United States, Canada, you name it. Middle East, well, maybe not so much, although even there, it's beginning to happen. And, it's one of these things that when it begins to go on, you almost don't notice. I mean, we're still on the margins. We're still sort of dismissed by the death culture. But, we just keep going and keep talking and keep propagating the plants and keep sharing the information in the plants, in the knowledge, and things have a way of going exponential. And that's what we're hoping for. That's in fact what has to happen. It will reach a critical mass at a certain point where more and more people will wake up, more and more will get the message, and they'll be able to share the message with their neighbors and people that maybe have never been exposed to these ideas that are locked in, some capitalist or religious ideology can suddenly, wait, there's another way to look at things. We can look at things from the perspective of life instead of death. Why should life be all about waiting for your death? Why should we respect a religion that's founded on necrophilia and genocide? To admire in that, I don't see much. And this really is where it comes from. I mean, the mindset of the global corporate hegemony really has grown out of these religions of death. And it isn't good. I mean, the world doesn't need these things. The world needs a religion of life. We need to affirm life. We need to acknowledge that we are biological entities, and that we're part of the biosphere. We're not separate from it. We're semi-permeable membranes, Things flow in and things flow out, and we're all part of this chemical ecological system that binds everything together. The Earth itself is a living organism. We're just, we're like mitochondria or organelles floating around in this vast organismic environment that is the biosphere. And I think if people sort of understand that and help and integrate that into their living and their understanding by living sustainably, by not doing practices that hurt our mother, that hurt the biosphere. Try to avoid that as possible. Reject consumerism, reject propaganda. Think for yourself. Make your own conclusions. I mean, that's the other aspect of it. And that's where we also have to be very important, very, very careful. Because even within our group, as I said before, even among plant people, there's a desire to appropriate this power, to appropriate this knowledge and say, we're the way, the truth, and the life. We're the ones that have the only grip on how ayahuasca should be used or what's appropriate to do with mushrooms and all that. I don't really think we have to assert those kinds of things. Ayahuasca is very capable of presenting itself to everyone in the world in a way that they need to have it presented, and we should just relax about this appropriation of power. We should just say it's all good. It's coming to many people, more and more people all the time, and it's coming through the filters that it chooses. So that's fine. Let it unfold. The important thing is that each individual person has a chance to form their own conclusions because they have this intensely spiritual, intensely personal experience with the plants, and the plants have a different message for each one of us. So I love psychedelics. For one of the reasons I do love psychedelics is you can approach it in a completely scientific manner. Keep your skeptical radar turned all the way up. You don't have to believe anybody. You don't have to have faith. And by faith, In fact, I think faith is one of the things that we need to get rid of. Faith is one of the part of the shell game that has been foisted on us for millennia. If by faith you mean being asked to believe something without any evidence, that's what faith is. So I make a distinction between faith and belief. You can have all kinds of beliefs. You can believe many things, and you can have a lot of evidence to back them up. But faith, I make this distinction, and maybe it's just semantic. Faith is being asked to believe things without any evidence. You must have faith, my son. Right? Bullshit. Show me some evidence. I want some evidence. So, you say the world was created 6,000 years ago. Show me some evidence. Or you say God is, Jesus came down to save us, whatever. Show me the evidence. We're in a paradoxical situation. We're all, as a large group, we're all dismissed as the sort of, anti-intellectual woo-woo hippies who never really think about anything. And here it is. Suddenly, we're advocates of reason. We're the ones that say, how about a little critical thinking for a change? Why should we accept what our religious leaders, our political leaders, our scientists, our self-appointed holy ones, our gurus, our teachers, all of these people say to us? Why should we accept this? What makes them qualified to stand up here and rave like I'm raving to you now? Why should you accept what I'm saying? Absolutely no reason. In fact, don't accept what I'm saying. I don't want you to accept what I'm saying. I don't need your faith, and I don't need your following. I want you to think for yourself and use critical thinking and keep your skepticism high. Don't even accept what psychedelics tell you. How about that? They're as tricky as anybody. But you have the ability to evaluate the message and draw your own conclusions. And that's what's cool about psychedelics. They do not require faith. You can simply take them and draw your own conclusions. And one person may say, well, clearly this is a channel from God himself. Okay, we can debate about that, but that's your conclusion. Or somebody else says, well, clearly, it's dome-headed beings, from Zeta Reticuli that have, propagated this message, and or the curanderos might say, well, it's the spirit of the plants. The psychedelics connect you with the world of plant consciousness. Well, that's their conclusion. That's fine. Others would say, well, clearly, the psychedelic experience is the malfunction of a toxified brain. That's okay too, Make your own conclusions. Don't believe anybody. Believe in yourself. If you need to have faith in yourself. And I guess that's my concluding remark. And I'll answer some questions if anybody has.